Howdy, y'all, and good now, whenever and wherever this finds you. Last night, Democracy 3.0 held its second Zoom meeting, and we had 8 in attendance. Today, I got the video, and I found the parts where we were all talking about how we want a consensus and how we want to build a consensus and how to build a consensus. And then what I did was I added some video to explain where I'm coming from as far as the deliberative discussion. So rather than tell a bunch of stories about this, why don't I just get on with it?
So, we're setting out, we are building this organization that innovates democratic processes and integrates people together and brings people together around one shared consensus. And the goal of the organization is to grow big enough that eventually our shared consensus is, we're big enough as a block of voters that our shared consensus that we will be able to tell the government and the politicians, this is what we're doing. and if you don't go along with it, we're voting you out. And so the shared consensus part, I think that's a thorny problem. I mean, that's a major problem of our country right now, is this polarization, the idea of reality itself is starting to split apart, where people don't even agree on facts.
So our question is, can democratic deliberations solve our extreme partisan polarization? And we approach this through a method that I call deliberative polling, which is not the same as ordinary polling. It's sort of built on top of it. We begin with a survey of the public, but then we gather the sample together, either face-to-face or online, for in-depth deliberation in small group discussions, plenary sessions where the experts from competing points of view answer questions developed in the small groups, and the small groups and plenary sessions alternate. And the discussions are moderated in small groups and permit the participants to come to an informed judgment over a weekend of deliberation, and they register their final considered judgment in confidential questionnaires, so we don't get the pressures of consensus in a jury verdict. And we have large enough numbers that we can evaluate the representativeness and the opinion changes statistically. So in effect, we put America in one room, or whatever country we're talking about.
A larger amount of people to have consensus, and of course, that's what I'm working on. The idea is you bring opposite people together and have them talk in a facilitated, informed way, and they begin to actually feel good about each other instead of you're the enemy, you're no, we just have different points of view. We're really not different. We just think different ways of doing things.
Democracy is supposed to have some connection between the will of the people and what's actually done. So democracy is fundamentally a very simple idea. But if you never get to form the will of the people, because everybody's misleading the public, manipulating them, spreading falsehoods so they don't know what to think, they will tune out. Public opinion never gets to form, really.
Man, I don't think people expect democracy anymore.
Candidates don't want to win the argument, they want to win the election.
I think people have sort of been worn down by the culture, and we've sort of given up on fighting.
So how can we organize a process where public opinion will actually serve democracy? So your voice matters. That's the theme of the weekend. America in One Room brings a scientific sample of the nation to a single place.
Over 500 registered voters to Dallas,
where they can talk to each other and wrestle with the country's big problems. There's so many cases where negative attack ads focus the public on just one little thing. Maybe it's not even true, maybe it's made up, and it can turn the election.
I don't know if it's true, but I heard when Obama was president, he gave $300 million of our money away to Africa for abortions. That's what I heard.
So instead of manipulation, we want deliberation.
They receive a briefing booklet with different points of view on the issues.
So having balanced informations with experts and using the collective intelligence of the people in the group.
Kind of balanced and thoughtful discussion, I think, is the magic elixir that brings democracy to life.
We got, like, say, 10 million people representative of America right now. Those 10 million people are probably like really polarized, and like 3 million of them, and the other 3 million, are, there's just a lot of tension, let's say, and it would probably be very hard to get anything done. So the other part of it is that we have to build a collaborative democratic process that works, like some process that allows people who may completely disagree about, lots of different ideas, and yet, be able to have everybody interact, like TC was talking about, like be able to sort of change how they feel and see each other. Like
When you take the triggers for partisan tribalism out of the conversation and just talk about the issues, it removes a lot of the poison.
We don't have to settle for the half-dead democracy that we have.
They were wary when they came. Talking about politics,
We've brought them from all over the country.
Over 500 registered voters to Dallas.
you are surrendering 4 days of your life to what we think is going to be an extremely important exercise in American democracy.
What's missing in our public life is alternatives. Everything is yes, no. You're for me, you're against me. And life isn't like that.
America in One Room brings a scientific sample of the nation to a single place where they can talk to each other in a civil manner. It's organized as what I call a deliberative poll. Some of my social science colleagues have wrongly concluded from ordinary polls that the public in aggregate is incompetent. But what we have found is that under conditions where people think their voice matters, the public is actually very smart.
This shouldn't be seen as jury duty. This shouldn't be seen as an obligation that Americans have. I think it should be cool and exciting and coveted to engage in a civic manner.
At least that, we can build this sort of inclusive space that you don't have to disagree with each other, but we're all still human beings. And we can all have a basic level of what you need, whatever you need, so that you can actually sit and talk and actually find things that you just agree about, a consensus, instead of and not just have it devolve into
being able to create a space where people can come in and meet with their minds. So yes, preserve the semblance of self and meet in a space with their minds is a different thing, because in a virtual setting, people can join in from all over the world, from different backgrounds, to speak about one specific piece of existence. And it's important to be able to know what the uniqueness is of your situation, but be able to cultivate the commonalities between us. So I'm totally on board with that part and what you guys say in regards to helping people have conversations without focusing on what their point of view is. So yeah, and I think that the platform itself can probably exist in many ways. But then also making it so that people would want to use it on a regular basis. So not necessarily addictive, but just wanting the participation aspect alone should have a pretty friendly user interface there, and something that could be measured over time. But yeah, I really love the idea, and I think that a lot of the pieces have already exist and have existed in small pockets for a long time. But we have the tools now and the ability to build these infrastructures that can provide for mass adoption of these new ways of doing things.
You notice in the discussions, there were almost no references to the political parties or the candidates. They were talking about the big challenges facing America. We think that we are in America riven by these great divisions, but in fact, the public is much more open to discussion.
People want deliverance from the toxic polarization of our political system.
So that people can come together and actually get past their differences. You know, you said, Eddie, if you put 10 million people together, 3 million would be, but they've done that. They found out that they can actually overcome their differences. So not 3 million, but they had 500.
To human connection. And it becomes more precious with every year of our descent into the cold realities of cyberspace.
This whole program has changed my attitude. I'm a lot more open-minded than many of my friends today.
Yeah. If people stuck to the issues, that we could get some stuff done in this country.
A lot harder to hate in person.
You know, it's the 20th century now, and you know, we can meet and communicate much more easily than was possible before. And I think something is now possible that was not possible before, which is that you know, you can open source the democracy.
As we became more educated on the topic, we became more moderate and less polarized.
The more educated we are, the more opportunity we have to sit down and recognize each other's commonalities.
Yeah. Political parties, that's a 20th century model. We can do better by crowdsourcing democracy and writing the legislation that we want on the president's desk ourselves.
You know, this idea that, you know, to me, the core of Brian's idea is, you know, look, we, these politicians promise things and then we elect them and then they get into office and then they don't fulfill their promises. So that doesn't work. Why not just, you know, write the legislation and then tell the politicians, this is what you pass, and, you know, you do it or we vote you out.
Okay, hi everybody, my name's Louise and I've come from Dublin in Ireland to share my experience. So my experience is quite different than everybody on the panel. I was one of the randomly selected assembly members on the Irish Citizens Assembly that took part from 2016 to 2017. I answered a knock on my door one day and there was a guy there just with a clipboard and he was asking me questions and said, would you like to take part in this assembly? I really had no idea what he was talking about. I've no political background, no real engagement in anything political or social to much extent in my life. I should say that it was August and I had been at home for 2 full months with my 3 children, and this man was standing on my doorstep offering to bring me to a hotel once a month to talk to grown-ups about grown-up things. So I said, yes, okay, I don't care what it is, I'm going. That's the true story. So that's how I got involved, basically. There was no other way about it. That's how I got involved. And we started in October 2016 and we ended our deliberations on our first topic in May 2017. As a direct result of our recommendations, the government set up a parliamentary committee which basically went through a mini citizens assembly. They had their own version of it, just an abridged version. And then the country went to a referendum and we saw basically within a percentage point that the country voted exactly as 100 citizens had voted to change the abortion laws in Ireland. A topic like abortion is obviously very polarising a topic, so we had in the media we had very much a strong yes and we had very much a strong no, and the sense was through the assembly process that really there was the black and the white, but the vast majority of people sat in this wide grey area in the middle. And what the Citizens' Assembly allowed to come about was for time and space to be given to that grey area, to allow people to discuss, to allow people to hear from experts, and to allow people to give some deep thought and deep, attention to a topic. And it's very important to get to the point where we have more day-to-day people involved in large decisions. The assumption is that, you know, my opinion doesn't really matter. What would I know about that? How would I be able to affect any change? But I believe if there is a mechanism there and there is a process available, that people will engage with it if they are asked. But you have to ask people to get involved. And I think as much as possible, the more that these types of initiatives can reach a variety of people from all walks of life, the more benefit for everybody, because everybody has something to offer. Everybody, from the truck driver to the person who's a CEO of a very large firm. I've seen it in roundtable discussions in a hotel, week in, week out. Everybody had something to contribute, and that's what needs to be heard.
Petition foundation, and a method of deliberating as a group, and then say you have 100 people, then the groups are, what are they, like six people or something like that, and they deliberate, and then they each elect a representative for that meeting that goes up, and then there's a larger group, so you can scale the entire 100 people as a pyramid into groups of 7 deliberating, and so I think SAS is convinced that something like this can work, and I think something like this can work, and it can work in the digital space. I think we can do this. I think we can design some sort of process that in some sense can integrate these large numbers of people and their ideas and their desires, what they want and what they don't want, and as Thomas as TC was talking about, we big part of, we need this because otherwise, the way it's set up right now, you have I guess the media or the establishment or whatever, dividing us, and you just have 2 groups of people that are completely divided, and then like a smaller group at the top who can sort of manipulate the system, because the 2 large groups are always at their throats and at each other's throats, and so they lose their power because they cancel each other out. So yeah, I think that I think it's the ideas, and then but for our theory of change, for how this is going to work, because you already have a system there, it's like you sort of have to build on top of it, but we can build independently this open source democracy, and then when it gets large enough, then you can just plug it into the old system, do all the deliberation and the consensus finding in your new democracy 3.0, and then just say, okay, we all agree on this, and so as a group, we're going to tell the old system, this is what you do, and our votes are the power that says you do need to do it or you're out.
We're excited you're thinking about joining our discussions. The deliberation platform is easy to use. Here's what to expect. When you log in, you'll be asked to introduce yourself briefly. The platform will guide you through the discussion topics. You'll get some briefing materials before the session starts, and some of that information is also available in the agenda. After all the topics are discussed, your group will develop and rank some questions to be presented and answered by plenary sessions with experts and policymakers. You'll join that plenary session with your group. Depending on the event schedule, you may join your small group again or complete a survey to finish. We hope you'll join us. See you soon.
Great. Now, I think that in general, though, like the problem with our current structures are the people. Like our systems that we have, our human political structures, represent the will of the American people that we are today. We're divided not because there's 2 parties, but because there's a giant rift in this nation from a society standpoint from day one, and it's never been resolved. And that's the that's reflected in the Senate and the Electoral College and all the way up into the way people vote today. And so how do you change the hearts and minds of people is really the question that I think. Now, if you can remove people from the political apparatuses a bit by leveraging technology, that helps a bit if it's open sourced and done in a ethical way. Of course, I think that's smart, but still, I like all of these conversations. We like to think a lot of times that if we just demonstrate a good policy to people, people will get on board, and it's just fucking not true. It's just not true. Technology rapidly getting us there, or we're stuck with waiting for people to have empathy towards one another, which I don't see happening soon, unfortunately.
Well, that's a good question. Are we being moved forward by technology, or are we waiting for humanity to get empathy for itself? I think both and. As you can see, the thing that's holding us all back, regardless of what we want to do, is the polarity of the people. And so getting the people to come together is important and is going to be part of this longer process. So I thank you all for letting me be part of this meeting and for letting me show you what I'm so excited about with the deliberative polling and America in one room.